greet our friends everywhere with Chapter 9 of Dr. Ida, the story of Ida Scudder. This is another in the series, Stories of Great Christians, and comes to you from the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago.
It was the summer of 1899, and I felt glorious. Oh, I still didn't know what to do about Birchfield Milliken, and I prayed that God's will would be done in his life and mine. But Annie Hancock, my former schoolmate at Northfield, had decided to become a missionary, and my board had accepted her for service in India, providing she could raise her support. If she could do so in time, we would sail for India together, and in a very few weeks I would be on my way. I was asked to see the secretary of our board, and I was sure this was the usual happy formality before missionary candidates left for their field of service.
I'm Dr. Cobb. Please sit down, excuse me, Dr. Scudder. My congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Cobb.
You're ready to sail?
I'll be ready to sail, on schedule.
The board would like to ask you to defer your sailing for 2 months.
Sir?
Well, I realize that this is a rather sudden request.
Dr. Cobb, I've made all of the sailing arrangements, and I've been waiting to get back to India for 4 years.
I know. May I call you Ida, knowing your family the way I do? Ida, it's only for 2 months, and there is a very good reason for this request.
I'm sure there must be, sir.
Do you know Dr. Louisa Hart?
Of course. She's a medical missionary in Ranipet, where I was born.
Dr. Hart has written the board advising that a hospital for women be established at Vellore, where your father is stationed.
Oh, I agree. My father dreamed of a hospital there, too.
You believe a hospital is needed?
There are thousands of women in that part of South India who desperately need such a hospital, who are waiting for one.
Do you believe enough in it to spend an extra 2 months to help raise some money for it?
I believe in it, but I've never raised money for anything.
Well, the board thinks you could do it. And hearing your enthusiasm, I know you can do it. The board has voted its permission for your special assignment, if you'll accept.
How much money is needed?
Well, the board thought that perhaps...
It would probably take at least $50,000, wouldn't it?
Oh, 50,000?
It would take that much, wouldn't it, to build a really adequate hospital in Vellore?
Oh, my dear girl, if $50,000... The board decided you might be authorized to raise $8,000. And the board would be delighted, and I suspect amazed, considering the financial situation in our country, if you raised half that amount. That is, if you care to try.
If I care to try. Dr. Cobb, we need that hospital.
Youthful enthusiasm is a marvelous thing, and I had no idea what I was agreeing to. I had decided earlier to take my internship with my father, feeling this would be more practical than remaining longer in the States. I wanted to begin my work, but this request from the Board of Missions of the Reformed Church in America to raise funds for a hospital in Vellore, which we needed so very much, seemed reason enough to defer my sailing to India for 2 months. At the suggestion of some friends I was staying with, I arranged to see the lady who was president of the Women's Society at the Marble Collegiate Church in New York City.
Yes.
Are you Miss Tabor?
Yes, I am. You must be Dr. Scudder.
I am.
I understood you were to call this afternoon. Please come in. We'll go to the library for our chat.
What a lovely home you have, Miss Tabor.
Thank you. Oh, let me introduce Mr. Shell, the gentleman in the sitting room. Mr. Shell, this is Dr. Ida Scudder.
Oh, I'm delighted to meet you, Dr. Scudder.
You'll excuse us, won't you, Mr. Shell?
But of course, a pleasure, ma'am.
Mr. Shell is my brother-in-law. Here we are. Please make yourself comfortable. Now, what is it you wanted to see me about?
I believe you know I've been staying with Miss Van Nest and Miss Moffat.
Yes?
They suggested that I come to see you, since you're the president of the women's group at the collegiate church.
About what, Dr. Scudder?
Well, I'd like to tell the ladies of your church about my work in India, and especially about our newest project, the building of Woman's Hospital, the very first in our area.
In other words, you're raising funds.
Yes, I am. And our Board of Missions has authorized me to do this. We need $8,000, although I think it will take more than that to build the type of facility we really need.
Our funds are all committed, Dr. Scudder. We have an annual budget, you know. I really don't think it would be a profitable use of your time.
Miss Tabor, surely the ladies of your church need to know the conditions under which their sisters in India must live. I've dedicated my life to helping them, and I most certainly don't begrudge an hour or so of my time.
Well, tell me more of what you have in mind.
I come from a missionary family.
I've heard your father speak.
I didn't want to become a missionary. I fought the idea for many years. But one night I had 3 very strange visits. 3 times, 3 different men knocked on my door, asking for help for their wives who were having difficulty in childbirth. I thought they were looking for my father, but I soon learned that they wanted a woman to help, that they would never allow a strange man, especially a foreigner, and a Christian foreigner at that, to even look at their wives. I couldn't do anything to help. I wasn't even a nurse. Later, I learned that the 3 mothers had died in childbirth.
Oh, how terrible.
That was when I decided to spend my life as a missionary doctor in India. I am now a doctor, and I return to India next month. And I know that a hospital for women, staffed by women doctors and nurses, is what we so desperately need. We can visit them in their homes, of course, but these women need more. They need a hospital.
Of course, you are aware that the women of our church have supported missions in India for many years.
I know you have, but so much more must be done, can be done, with just a few more resources. We have a woman doctor in South India now, Louisa Hart from Canada. She's performing serious operations in dark, dirty rooms, right in the zananas, the women's quarters, because there is no hospital.
Oh, you're quite an eloquent speaker, Dr. Scudder. I think it might be possible to arrange for you to address our women's group. Would next Monday be satisfactory?
Oh, yes.
I won't make any promises. We do have that budget, and our funds are committed. But we might be able to raise a few $100.
Thank you, Miss Tabor.
Until next Monday, then. We meet at 2:00.
Thank you again, Miss Tabor. Oh, Mr. Shell.
A very pleasant good afternoon to you, Doctor. Good to have met you.
I was grateful for this small victory, regardless of the outcome. I'd already discovered I wasn't very good at raising money. A few $100 had been collected, but I was nowhere near the $8,000 goal. I was beginning to understand why Dr. Cobb thought me so naive when I first suggested to him that I raise $50,000. The board knew how difficult it was to raise money for missions. I didn't, and neither had Annie Hancock.
Ida, I don't see how I can possibly sail with you next month.
You've made your reservation.
That was an act of faith. And perhaps it was more the pressure of your faith than a conviction of mine. I simply haven't been able to raise my support.
People keep telling me there isn't enough money, but there is money enough for what they want, and sometimes don't even need. When people in India are dying because there is no one to tell them about Christ, or dying because there isn't anyone to heal them or treat them. Well, it's hard for me just to sit back and let our comfortable Americans get by with their apathy. How much of your support have you secured?
Just about 1/4.
We'll have to get busy.
We?
I'm going to help you. I'm scheduled to speak at the Collegiate Church next Monday.
But you'll be speaking about the hospital.
I will, but I'll also talk about you.
Ida, you can't. The hospital is more important than my going. You need to raise all the money you can for it.
Annie, India needs hospitals and doctors, but it needs Bible women and evangelists like yourself even more. I believe the Lord wants me to talk about you to those Park Avenue ladies, and I will.
And I did. Oh, I mentioned the hospital. You may be sure of that. But I talked about the villages and the women who lived there, so often forgotten and without hope. I told how Annie was my friend and how she would be able to help those village women. I said how much I wanted Annie to be able to sail with me, and how much was still lacking.
Dr. Scudder, I'm Gertrude Dodd.
How do you do, Mrs. Dodd?
Miss Dodd.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, not as sorry as I've been, I can assure you. That was a marvelous address.
Thank you.
My 2 sisters and I have been talking, and we think it would be such a pity for your friend not to sail with you just because some overfed, overdressed women are either too selfish or too lazy to make up their minds. There's no need of her waiting, my dear. My sisters and I will see to it that the rest of her support is provided. Tell Annie Hancock that she's going with you to India.
I can't tell you how grateful I am. If only I could find some way to thank you.
You already have, Dr. Scudder. You already have.
Many years later, Miss Dodd, this dear, sweet spinster lady, would herself come to India to live and work and use up her wealth in the cause of Christ and in a witness to his love. How happy I was for Annie. I didn't raise much money for the hospital that day, something under $200 as I recall. But knowing that Annie would be sailing for India made up for that disappointment. The hospital fund was not progressing well. After 2 months of intensive work and speaking, I was faced with the fact that less than $1,000 had been secured, and for me, time was running out.
And so we conclude Chapter 9 of Dr. Ida, the story of Ida Scudder. This has been another in the series, Stories of Great Christians, coming to you from the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago.